Welcome to Delivering Miracles, a podcast to teach women like you tips and strategies on how you can have a safer pregnancy so you can bring home a healthy baby. I'm your host and your high-risk pregnancy expert, Parijat Deshpande. I can't wait to chat with you. Once my high-risk pregnancy was over and my son had come home, there was a day I'd walked into my home office and it had been completely neglected because I was on bed rest and then I was in the hospital on bed rest and then he was in the hospital for months. And very early in my pregnancy, my doctor told me, you have to stop working. And then being on bed rest, I wasn't actually ever going into the office. So I never saw what happened. And my husband was trying to take care of everything. And anyway, the office turned into a storage space, basically. Desk was piled high with papers and all kinds of stuff. And I remember that day I walked into that office for the first time in months, probably close to a year, like maybe 9-10 months. And I walked in and I just burst into tears because the way that office looked was how my life felt. And I hadn't been able to put it into words until that moment. But it felt like after having a high-risk pregnancy and then a baby in the NICU for so many months, that it felt like my entire life had blown up. Like, War of the Worlds kind of blown up. Like there were no recognizable pieces of my life left. And now, after going through everything, my job was to pick up the pieces. First of all, find them. Are they all still even there? Find them and then put them together in a way that I hoped they still fit, if they still fit, or find a way for them to fit again. It was really heartbreaking just to finally have a moment to step back and see what had happened to our life. And one of the biggest aspects of my life that had changed was my career had ended. And having been somebody who was very proud of having a career and loved working, this was really hard for me. And my identity, my whole identity had completely shattered, it felt like. And then on top of that, to know that because of my son's health complications, I was not going to be able to work for years, because there was just too many medical appointments and he was on lockdown for 2.5 years, which meant I was on lockdown for 2.5 years. And it was just a lot. It was a lot. And finally, after he was off of lockdown, I realized, you know what? I really, really want to work again. And if you followed this podcast and you know my story a little bit, you know that my experience with a high-risk pregnancy really informed the career that I have now. And it occurred to me that, hey, yes, all the pieces fell apart, and I had to rebuild it, but there's actually something positive in that. In that, if I get to rebuild it, I get to now rebuild it the way that I want, in a way that fits our life, which, to be honest, our life does not allow for me to have a traditional job. It's even to this day would not be possible. And there was such a relief in that recognition and that allowing myself to really go there and believe that, and to really embrace that, hey, yeah, there's a lot of difficulty and challenges and feeling like my whole life had fallen apart. But now that I get to rebuild it, I actually get to do it the way that I want. And that's pretty darn cool. There's some freedom in that, a relief with that, to be real. And so I'm really excited to have Meg Brunson on this podcast today because she knows a little something about that. She herself had a high-risk pregnancy and she recreated her life into a business that's actually perfectly suited for her life and her family. And I just think it's a part of the high-risk pregnancy experience that we really don't talk about enough. I mean, what part of it do we talk about enough anyway? Let's be real. But this part I think is so empowering because as you feel your life falling apart, there is then the opportunity to rebuild it the way that you want. And I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. Meg has been marketing to moms for 8+ years and is a former Facebook employee. She's the founder and CEO of EIEIO Marketing, a digital marketing agency focused on Facebook marketing. She left the 9-to-5 in 2017 so she could be the mom she wanted to be to her 4 young daughters. And after helping her daughter launch her first business, Storytime with Kiki, at the age of 10, Meg began the Familypreneur podcast, an interview-style podcast for parent entrepreneurs raising entrepreneurial children. Welcome, Meg. I'm so excited that you're here. I can't wait to jump in and talk about your journey.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Yeah. I mean, when you reached out and we first connected, what you shared about your experience with your high-risk pregnancy and how you created your business really, really hit home for me. And I think it's such an important aspect of this experience that we really need to shed more light on. So can you tell us a little bit about your pregnancy experience and how that impacted your career?
Of course. So I currently have 4 kids, and my first high-risk pregnancy was actually kiddo number 3. So my first 2 pregnancies were not enjoyable. I didn't have any of those easy pregnancies. Your listeners can probably all relate to that. But
that is for sure.
But nothing was diagnosably wrong, if that makes sense. Yep. So with baby number 3, things were just noticeably different. I was more tired. I had less energy. But when I made those complaints, those observations to my doctor, I got a lot of, well, yes, because you're pregnant. And nobody really was listening to how bad it was. You know, I don't go to the doctor for every sniffle, and I don't like taking medication for every little thing. So for me to go to a doctor and express that I need help means something. You know, something was really wrong. But it just got looked over and brushed over. You know, I told myself maybe it was my weight. You know, I was a little heavier than I never really lost the baby weight from baby 1 or baby 2. So I had steadily gained a little weight. I was a little bit older, but certainly not old. Like old, I think, now I'm trying to think of how old I was. I want to say I might have been 29. So definitely not like a...
Oh, yeah. So really young then.
Right. Well, and with my first child coming at 24, for me, like 29 was older, you know, older than...
Yeah, sure.
But not old, you know, by no stretch of the imagination was I an old mother. But I was trying to write off all these reasons why I could be like extra uncomfortable. And finally, at about 22 weeks, I told my doctor I couldn't do it. Like I physically could not continue to work. And I'll never forget him just saying to me, well, that's your choice, but don't think that you're going to get disability for this.
Whoa.
And I feel like I know where he was coming from. Like, I'm sure there are those people, you know, who want to game the system or whatever. And don't get me wrong, we were, as it was, paycheck to paycheck. So it was a tough decision for me and my husband, who supported my decision to stop working despite really not knowing what the heck was going on. You know, it was my word against everybody else's who couldn't find anything wrong.
Right.
Which made me feel, I don't know, like I was being a baby. You know, like I must just be
awful. Like you're not strong enough, or you're making this up, or you're being too sensitive.
Right. Being a princess, you know, being high maintenance.
Oh, that's awful.
And it was awful. And so I stopped working, and we didn't get any disability. I was the breadwinner, if you will. So I was working the 9 to 5, and my husband was working at a restaurant. He was a server. So he was working for tips, and it was okay, but it wasn't enough. So we ended up, you know, on public assistance and food stamps and things like that to help get us through, which was the first time I'd ever had to go that route, which again is kind of a blow to the ego, I think, for some of us who take pride in working and enjoy working and
yeah, totally,
you know, being able to provide for our families and things like that.
Right.
And so things just kind of stayed bad. Well, actually, let me back up. One of the other things that the doctor said to me, because I think this is important too, is he was like, well, why don't we just put you on like a modified work, right? Like we can just modify your work environment. So like, what do? Like, we'll just put you on office detail. And I'm like, well, that won't work. I have an office job. Like I sat at a desk and typed at a computer. Yeah. And he asked, he's like, well, what about that can't you do? And my answer is pretty pathetic. It was like, well, sometimes I have to go to the printer and it's in another room, and to have to get up and walk was exhausting. And the bathroom was so far away. And that it could take me a full half hour because I'd have to walk to the bathroom, and it should only take like 2 minutes, but it would take me like 10, and then going to the bathroom and then having to walk back. And it was just eating out my day. And even just keeping my head up. Like I was so exhausted and so drained that sitting in a chair, you know, with your back straight and your head up, which when you're pregnant, you're trying to keep your posture right so that you're
right.
not uncomfortable. By baby number 3, I was showing early. I was uncomfortable early, and just keeping my head up was not possible. I had to be able to lay down every so often. So that's kind of how bad it was. And then over the next couple of weeks, it just got worse. So it got to the point we had a 2-story house where going up the stairs, I was hand over hand on the railing and using my upper body just as much as my lower body to hoist myself up these stairs.
Oh my gosh.
In the morning.
I mean, that's clearly something very wrong, because that is not a typical exhaustion from pregnancy situation.
Right. And I couldn't, I mean, I was Googling, I was WebMDing, like I couldn't find anything that made sense. And in the mornings, I'd use my arms to help me like push my legs out of bed because my legs just felt like they didn't have the strength. And I think the worst moment for me, like the moment that that sealed the deal, like something has got to change, was I got stuck sitting on the toilet. And I know that's probably a great visual for everybody, but you know, I was in all my pregnant glory, probably 26, 27 weeks, and I couldn't get up. I had been using the sink in our powder room so that I could hoist myself up on the sink, like use my arms to help me get the momentum to get up. And I couldn't do it. I was struggling, and I had to call for my husband, which, gosh, I mean, it's just embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like nobody, I don't care how close you are in your relationship, like nobody's that close.
Right. I understand very, very well. You're so right.
And at that time, my oldest daughter, my second daughter, was probably about 2.5. I'm trying to do the math real quick in my head, and still wasn't walking. So she had some developmental delays, and I couldn't lift her anymore. I couldn't pick her up. So it limited what we could do. And I remember just hoping that my 3-hour gestational diabetes test came back positive, thinking maybe that's it.
Yeah, because you just want something. You want something to point to and go, something's not right. This is it. Here's the thing.
And when it came back negative, that's when I went like just crazy. Like I called the doctor. I had the nurse practitioner on the phone, and I went completely unreasonable, inappropriate, crazy person, and was like, something is wrong. You need to figure it out. I don't know what to do. I'm losing, just lost it. Like, I can't even imagine what I said to her on the phone. And it was a Friday.
You had to get their attention because they weren't taking you seriously.
Yeah. And it was a Friday at about 2 p.m. And she finally was like, fine, just go get blood work. And then over the week, it's Friday at 2 p.m. We're not going to have results till Monday morning, but over the weekend, drink a lot of water, eat a lot of food, like eat healthy food. And it was just all of those things that they tell you that you're like, okay, like this isn't a water issue.
Right.
It's not calcium. Like this isn't okay. So I went and got blood work, and then I went home and I laid down on the couch because I was tired, and my husband and my girls, and they were out in the backyard enjoying the beautiful June day and having a picnic, but I was too tired. And so I missed a phone call. And when I checked the voicemail, it was the hospital where I'd gone to get my blood work drawn. And the message just said, we ran preliminary tests and we need you to report to the emergency room immediately. And that was it.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like, no, that's not how this works. I called back. What am I going in for? And they said, your potassium's low. So I'm like, well, that makes sense. I hate bananas. Like, that was my first thought. Well, I hate bananas. So that totally makes sense. And when I got there, it was probably 4 or 5 hours before I realized how serious it was. They gave me IVs of potassium and things like that. And I remember laying there. It was about 11 o'clock at night. And they had just told me that they weren't going to release me. Like, I was going to spend the night there, which had never, outside of having children, and spending the night in the hospital, I've never been admitted to a hospital. So that was an adventure.
Yeah.
But I heard them talking outside saying, that I couldn't stay there. They couldn't keep me in the labor and delivery wing, which is where I was because I was 27 weeks.
Right.
That my body wasn't responding to the potassium. And that basically part of this came from what they had told me and part of it came from what I had heard. But because my potassium was so low, what was happening was all of the muscles in my body were dying.
Oh my God.
They were just breaking apart, which is why I was losing. I had so much weakness because my muscles.
And that's why you were so tired and you couldn't go up the stairs or walk to the bathroom.
Right. Because my muscles were just dying because they weren't getting the potassium that they needed, the electrolytes.
Right.
And electrolytes, I later find out, they all work together. So when your potassium goes down, your magnesium goes down and your calcium goes down and all those other electrolytes go down. So they couldn't keep me at labor and delivery because what's the most important muscle in your body? Your heart. And I was at such a high risk of heart failure because all of my muscles were dying that they didn't have the ability to monitor me effectively at labor and delivery. So I was transferred to the cardiac unit. I was the youngest patient on the cardiac floor. The only pregnant person they'd ever seen there.
Oh my gosh.
And I was hospitalized for over a week, and it was the best way I could describe it was like an episode of House where doctors and students just kept coming in and trying to ask me, like, what do you eat? What did you touch? What did you look at? Like, what could cause these issues? And then I was misdiagnosed. So long story short, I was misdiagnosed, and we identified that because when I became pregnant with my fourth, it came back. So with baby 3, they said it was a med reaction. So when we got pregnant with our fourth child, we said, easy, we just won't take the med. But it came back.
Oh my goodness.
We went through all of the same things again. And
was it less scary the second time because you knew you'd been through it before? Or was it scarier because now you knew what it was?
No, I think it was less scary because I had been through it before. And as much as the worst part, well, maybe that's not fair, but one of the parts that I remember as being like awful for me were the medications I had to take. So the potassium supplements I had to be on were so big. Like the pills were like double the size of a prenatal vitamin.
They are disgusting.
And I had to take 6 a day.
Oh my gosh, it's like swallowing 6 whales a day.
It's awful. And so I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that?
Yes.
How am I going to do that? But the prescription I needed was so high that the pharmacy wouldn't fill it without talking to the doctor.
Right.
They thought it was a typo.
Right. Like this crazy person here thinks she needs a lot of potassium. Let's not do that. Are we sure?
Because if you take too much potassium, it's just as dangerous as not having enough. And like obviously not medical advice. I'm no doctor, but they told me at the time that your normal potassium levels are between, I believe it's 3.5 and 5.2. And anything below 2.5 is considered life-threatening. And with baby 3, when I was finally admitted, I was at 2.1. So it was bad. It was severe.
Yeah.
And then because things, with me always happen this way, I actually had a second issue with baby 4, but at least it was one that people had heard of, cholestasis, ICP. So I had that with baby 4 as well, which just made things even more uncomfortable. But
that's a condition of the liver where you end up getting super, super itchy and get rash and hives, and that can be dangerous to you and baby. And usually a lot of women who have that end up delivering preterm just to protect mom and baby.
Yes. And we did. We were induced at 36 weeks. So that was a whole nother scare. But at least that one, there was a sense of other people are going through this. With the potassium issue, which they determined to be a kidney issue. So my kidneys, when they tested my blood, I had no electrolytes. When they tested my urine, they were through the roof. So my kidneys weren't working. My kidneys were failing to filter the electrolytes back into my blood system.
Wow. But they thought it was a medication issue. And so they stop this medication, you'll be fine, except next time around happen again.
Correct. So with baby 3, they said the medication is causing your kidney damage or the kidney failure, however you want to term it. But with baby 4, we avoided that med. We just avoided it. And I'm still anti-med. It was a hyperemesis related medication. Like I was getting extreme morning sickness. So it was one of those meds they give you to combat morning sickness. So I avoided it. And now they think that it's a genetic condition, but of course, genetic testing is not is not cheap, and it wasn't covered. So we opted not to get the genetic testing at that time, since we were 100% done having children. Like, that was enough for us.
Yeah, you guys had been through the ringer at that point.
Right. We were done. But it was crazy. And I feel like, especially the first time it hit with baby 3, I know I kind of summarized the whole experience, but there's just never been a feeling like that. I feel like so many people didn't understand the severity of what I was going through. Because like me, when you hear low potassium, you think, well, eat a banana. Like, you'll be good.
Right.
And we calculated it based on the meds we were on and the potassium in the banana. And I'm probably going to be a little off, but it was something like I would have had to eat like 127 bananas in a day in order to get, do you know what I mean? Like, we calculated it. And it was some ridiculous number where it was like, it's not as simple as eat a banana. I don't think anybody...
Yeah. Or have some Gatorade and you'll be fine.
Right. No, it wasn't like that at all.
Well, you hit on a really important aspect of that, which is this feeling of not being understood. And there's one layer of that which makes you feel very alone, which is an emotional experience I think a lot of women with high-risk pregnancies have. And then there's the added level of when you don't feel understood by your medical team and you can feel in your body something's not right. And everyone's going, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's stress. I don't know. You're fine. Have some water. And it really leaves you feeling extremely helpless and also really scared because you don't know what to do because no one's doing anything for you.
Right. You really, and it's changed the way I advocate for myself. Like, you have to be a better advocate for yourself.
Absolutely.
I just can't imagine. My nephrologist, which is the kidney doctor, he was amazing. I still feel like he was just like my hero for like those years. But he didn't have the best bedside manner. Like, I hope he doesn't listen to this and then feel offended. But he did say to me, it's a miracle that you're so lucky. You're so lucky that they caught it when they did. I don't think you would have lived till Monday.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this was when I was in the hospital. So it's like, can we make me better before we start talking about about me not living till Monday? But I just felt like other people, my friends, my family, not that they didn't love me and support me and things like that, but I just felt like nobody could understand what I was going through. And I felt like nobody understood how serious it was, like how close that was to being it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think for a lot of people on the outside, even if they're close friends or family, it's hard to accept that it could be that bad. And so there's this tendency to kind of minimize it and go, okay, well, you survived, right? So it's probably okay.
It changed my whole perspective on parenting, on everything. When I was a child, my dad died 2 days before I turned 12. So,
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Thanks. And I mean, it's been many years. It is what it is, and it leaves a lasting impact. I went through this trauma of losing a parent at a really young age, and have constantly gone through like many relapses of trauma when, my dad wasn't there at my wedding, right, and my dad didn't see my his granddaughters be born, and like those things come up. Of course. And it's like having a brush with my own mortality, like, makes those things come up for me. Like, I felt like my impact hadn't been made on my kids. Like, I'm not done. I'm not ready. And I don't want that for them. I know what it's like to lose a parent.
Yes.
And I don't know at exactly what point it hit, but with baby 3, that's when I went to my husband and I said, I'm done. I'm not going back to work. I can't go back. I can't be away from my family. I can't. Right. I just can't.
It became so personal at that point because I imagine your values changed or your priorities changed or became so clear that having experienced losing a parent so early and then being at the brink of life and death for yourself and knowing who you're leaving behind, it just became so clear. Most important, I want to be with my family.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I need to make those memories because if something happens, I need to know that we made the most of our time together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Hey, have you checked out my brand new book, Pregnancy Brain, yet? It's all about the mind-body approach to stress management during a high-risk pregnancy specifically. It has stories from my very high-risk pregnancy, tons of client stories, and so much research on the impact of stress on pregnancy and pregnancy complications and how you can have a healthy pregnancy. I would love for you to check it out at pregnancybrainbook.com. That's pregnancybrainbook.com. So how did that, now transitioning that kind of into what you do now, how did you come to the decision that you wanted to become an entrepreneur and have your own business? And how did you decide what structure of the business was best for your family once you made that decision?
And I dabbled in a lot of things. So I did some craft projects, like I created an Etsy shop. I did some craft shows. I love arts and crafts. So that kind of was the first thing I thought of, was I'll make stuff and sell it, you know? I've been making stuff for my friends, and it just made sense that I could monetize it. So I did that. And it's a unique, way of trading time for money, because there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many things I can make and so much money I can charge for them. So I felt like it wasn't really scalable. And I toyed with some direct sales companies. I joined a couple that I thought were up and coming or that I was interested in for different reasons. But sales was just not really for me. I think part of it was I wasn't super passionate about the products I was trying to sell. Like I saw up and coming opportunities, but that didn't necessarily translate into something I was so passionate about I could talk about it every single day. So those kind of failed. And I just kept pivoting and trying new things and seeing what other people were doing. And ultimately what it was that brought us out of that initially was, it's like a franchise model of mommy blogging. So I created a mom blog. I helped local families find things to do in our area. It was very hyper local, very, very focused on the city we lived in. And I learned a lot about advertising and marketing, and I made money by selling advertising space on the website. And that was just life-changing for us, because I was really involving my kids in the experience. We were reviewing places we would go. So I would take the kids to the indoor play center down the road, and then I would take pictures while they were there, and we would have a great time. And then I would write all about it in a blog post, share it on social media, share it all over the place, and eventually was able to monetize that through selling ads. So that was just it just made sense. That was something I could talk about all the time, posting pictures and telling stories about the fun things that my family had done. And it served that void, or that I didn't even know was there before I got sick, where I wanted to make memories with my kids. This was a way for me to do that. And I found a way to monetize
that. Is so cool. That is so cool, because I see exactly what you meant by, I created the business that fit with my family's needs. You led with your biggest value, your most important value. I want to make memories with my children. How can I do that? Then how can I monetize that? It's amazing, because then the business fits into your life. You're not trying to fit your life into the business. And that usually for a lot of people feels pretty bad, because it doesn't fit so great and you're always working and it just feel good.
Right. And then from there, I just learned, I self-directed studies. I learned more and more and more about marketing and advertising and how to do those things efficiently. And I was promoting local businesses, but I was promoting myself through Facebook. So Facebook everybody seemed to be on it, and it was really inexpensive to run ads. So I would boost posts and start sending things out in the Facebook world to get other parents near me to follow my blog. The bigger following you have, the more you can charge advertisers. So I was doing all of those things, and I began to figure out Facebook. So other mommy bloggers in my network would come to me, and we'd troubleshoot, and I'd help them with what they were doing on Facebook to improve what they were doing and things like that. And it just kind of snowballed. And then I didn't really see this coming, but I interviewed for a position at Facebook and was hired. So my time at Facebook was after my fourth child had been born. I went back to work.
No kidding. I was going to ask if your experience with Facebook helped you with this, but it's totally the other way around. Huh.
Yeah, it was totally the opposite. So I interviewed, I got the job, and it was an interesting interview process because I hadn't been working in a couple years. So that came up, like, well, why haven't you been working? And I actually have never taken a marketing class. It was a marketing role at Facebook, and I don't have a marketing degree. I graduated with a degree in criminal justice. So
nothing at all related to
it was like, no. But luckily, Facebook is a pretty untraditional company.
That's very true.
So I was able to prove my worth through my experiences, my self-directed studies, I did know what I was talking about. I was hired. So in my mind, I said, I've always worked. Like I got a job as early as I could when I was a kid. I was 15 and I've always worked. And I thought, I think I'm better. Like, I think this traumatic experience, I think I'm over it and I can go back to work and function as a normal full-time employee. So those were the things I told myself. So I took the job, I went back to work, and about a year in, it just wasn't filling me anymore. Those same things were coming back. I mean, now I've got 4 girls and they all have their own unique challenges. Some of them are, one of my daughters has apraxia, which is a speech disorder. Another one just has some general social and emotional delays. Got ADHD. Like, my kids all have their own little quirks, like most kids do, but there's IEP meetings and therapy appointments and school plays and field trips and class mom activities, and I couldn't juggle it all the way I wanted to. So that's when I realized.
So you had you'd moved away from that value that had led you to begin with, which is I want to create memories and spend more time. Is that a fair thing to say?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think I didn't realize how essential that was to me, like how core that was. I thought that I could just get over what had happened when I was sick, like those, like it was a mindset thing. Like I could just shift my perspective.
Oh, yes, yes. And what you realized is it wasn't a mindset shift. It was something that was core to you and who you are as a person. So this wasn't just, let me think about it differently. This is really who you are and what you needed in your life. Right.
It was, no, you're done working a 9 to 5. Like, this is never going to happen again. It doesn't matter that Facebook is like the coolest freaking place in the world. Like, I don't know if you could come up with a place that would be a cooler place to work. Like, maybe
I have heard that.
Maybe Google, maybe Google. Like, Google would probably argue. Google employees would argue. But other than that, like, it's a really cool environment. But it's just like, nope. Like, I'm not cracked up for the 9 to 5. And you know what? That's okay, because I found something that's better for me. And I'm so passionate now about, like, family is obviously huge, but also entrepreneurship. Just encouraging everybody to have some sort of a side hustle, some sort of a passion project. I mean, it was only a couple years ago, my mom and my stepfather both lost their jobs in the same exact year for totally unrelated issues. One outsourced overseas and one literally just closed like the whole building in their city. And they both found themselves on pensions with time limits and scrambling. And it's like, if they had a side hustle, like if either one of them had something that they were pursuing on the side, then they could just hustle harder, you know, and build something. So it's almost like having a side hustle is like, an insurance.
Yes. You know? Like a safety net that there's something else there. So, okay, let me ask you this then. For our listeners who are tuning in and are going, that sounds awesome. I can't do that. I don't have the skills. I'm not an entrepreneur. I can't do that. That's not me. What do you say to women who are listening and thinking that they like the idea, but they don't think they could do it?
And I think that I don't want to say that it's for everybody, because there definitely may be some people that it really just isn't for you, and that's fine. Like, we're all different, and that's fine. But I think if you really deep down feel like, I want to do this, but it's not for me, not just like it's not for me and I don't want to. Do you know what I mean? I think that's
true.
It. It's you think it's not for you, but do you want it? So if you want it and think it's not for you, then I think I can speak to you this way. Is that part of being a successful entrepreneur is failing. Like, you can't course correct if you don't start the course.
Oh, that's so good.
You have to take a couple steps. You have to do something. You have to make mistakes. Because if you're not willing to fall, then you don't even know. Like, you don't know what you don't know until you try it.
That's so true.
So I would just say, just try something.
Yes.
Everybody has marketable skills, and sometimes they can be hard to see because for me, Facebook advertising comes so easy that it's like, well, people can't possibly need help with this.
You were talking to someone who very much needs help with that.
But, and I do know that. Like, I do know that now, but there's so many skills that you can monetize. Yeah. And then there are some people that have the most obscure businesses, but they're so profitable. Right. And it's because there's something for everybody. So I think you could just talk to your friends, talk to your family, like ask people, like, what am I good at? If you don't know, ask. Like, what are the top 3 things that you think I'm really good at? And I'm willing to bet that for me, later in life, marketing would have been one of them. But earlier in life, like when I started my craft business, it would have been creativity. Like that was one of them. But even creativity, I do still use now. I mean, when you're making social media posts and creating advertisements, you're using creativity. So I think some of it is just recognizing what your strengths are and then determining how you can monetize them. And that's actually the exact process I went through with my 10-year-old.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Because you helped her grow her business. I think you hit on a really great point, which is that part of it is a mindset shift, right? Is recognizing that I do have marketable skills. I may not know how to market them. There are people that can help you do that, but I do have skills that people are willing to pay me for. I have friends who had to make that shift themselves for a variety of reasons. And they have all kinds of, shops on Etsy, or they have their own businesses or something, because it came from this shift that, hey, I can't work a 9-to-5 job for whatever reason, but there are things I can do that people are willing to pay me money for. And let me try it and let me see what happens. And every single one of them has been successful in it.
And another thing you can do if you are coming from a place of traditional employment is look at what you're doing in your job. Like, what are you doing right now that somebody else is paying you to do as an employee? And then how can you offer that to other people, like on a freelance
that's
basis?
So good. Yes.
So, I mean, when I left Facebook, it literally was, what am I doing here? Well, I'm having these phone calls where I'm coaching and consulting people. Well, I'll just offer to have a phone call where I'll coach and consult people. And then I added to it and said, or I'll just run it for you. And then we don't have to have coaching calls because I'll just do it because I know what I'm doing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that. And I think for those of you that are listening, I hope what you're really getting out of this is when you go through a high-risk pregnancy, when you have these health challenges, when you've got children who have medical complications, whatever the challenges are that lead you up to that point, it's really scary when you can't work the way that you've worked before. I know that personally. Meg knows that personally. But that there is hope in being able to build and rebuild your career and your life in a way that fits your current situation, even if other stuff seems to be falling apart. And I think that message of hope is so, so critical. So thank you, Meg, for sharing that. One last question for you, Meg, which is, what message of hope do you have for women who are listening right now, who are in the thick of it with a high-risk pregnancy, or have a baby in the NICU, or caring for a baby with medical challenges, who have the financial stress of not being able to work or as much as they want, and are looking for something to help them through it? What message of hope do you have for our listeners?
I would say, I feel like my biggest piece of advice would be to seek out community. So find other people that are going through similar things. And there may be more than one community. So you may have a community of people that are going through the same medical concerns, the same pregnancy-related concerns, but then seek out a community of people who are also willing to help you build your business. There are so many people out there. So many women have been amazing, just contributing their levels of knowledge and expertise and masterminding together and helping build each other up. And I think, like I said before, there's going to be failures, there's going to be setbacks, but you just keep in mind like what those values are, providing that better future and better situation for yourself and your family and your children. And it'll come together. One of the things I always think of, and I don't know I'm sure somebody said it, like somebody famous or something, but it's okay to fall as long as you're falling forward.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard that. That's really good.
Yeah, so it's like, it's okay, fall, but fall in a forward direction. And if you have to change directions, that's okay too, as long as you're still going forward. So just trying to keep your mindset on the positive, keep your mindset on the future, keep thinking about the life that you are going to build for yourself and not those obstacles that are currently trying to hold you back. And I know that sometimes, with these medical things, like sometimes there really isn't anything you can do. You're hospitalized for a week. Well, guess what? Life will wait, but it will, it'll wait. And the people who matter will understand those things, and they'll be waiting for you when you're ready to resume your journey. Oh
my gosh. I love that. I love that so much. And I wish somebody had told me that years ago. So thank you for sharing that so much. Meg, for our listeners who want to know more about what you do, or if they are looking for support with Facebook ads or anything about their business, where can they find you?
Sure. So my website is megbrunson.com, and I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, kind of everywhere. My handle is @the_Meg_Brunson.
Awesome. And we will have all of that linked for all of you in the show notes, so it is easy for you to connect with Meg. Thank you so much for being on. I mean, I feel lighter just talking to you because there's so much hope in the message that you shared today. So thank you again so much for sharing your journey and for showing us what is possible even when you're going through a high-risk pregnancy.
Thank you so much. This has been a really enjoyable interview.
Yay! Oh my gosh. I literally feel physically lighter after talking to her. I mean, there's so much hope. There's so much hope. I know the devastation of being told you can't work, of being told that you have to stop doing any kind of certain kinds of activities, of feeling like your entire world has fallen apart. Meg knows it too. And it can feel really bleak. There's so much stress. I can't tell you how many women I hear from who are put on bed rest going, I can't work and our income has been cut by half. And what do I do? And the stress that comes with that. And we actually talked about that in a previous episode that I'm going to link to in the show notes too, if you missed it. It's real. And I think what I love the most about what Meg shared is there's hope to rebuild that life. Even if the whole world feels like it's falling apart, you can rebuild it to fit the needs that you have right now. And the best place to start is to ask yourself, what am I good at? What am I good at? And start there, because I bet you're going to find some really cool opportunities, and out of what might feel like a disaster, I think is going to come some really amazing things for you in the future. And I have so much hope for you that is going to be your case. So give yourself the opportunity to expand your mind and think about what else can you do now that you have this opportunity to rebuild. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And if you enjoyed today's episode, I would love it if you can head over to Apple Podcasts by iTunes and leave a review so more women who are going through a high-risk pregnancy can tune in to Delivering Miracles and receive this hope and inspiration and tips on how to get through a high-risk pregnancy and rebuild the life of your dreams after it's all over, because it is possible. And if you're experiencing pregnancy complications right now and you're worried about your baby and you're anxious about what's going to happen, whether you're going to deliver early, I invite you to check out my free webinar that's on my website at parijatdeshpande.com. By watching it, you'll discover how to overcome your fear and your anxiety so you can actually stay pregnant as long as possible, even if you're facing pregnancy complications, because of the mind-body connection that's there. Also, I would love to stay in touch. So follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook at Parijat Desh. That's PARIJATDESH. They say that out of darkness comes light, that at the end of a dark tunnel, you will see light again. And those are a lot of words, and I know they're hard to believe when you're in the thick of it. So I want you to feel it. Feel Meg's words today. Feel the hope that she's instilled in us, and know that you do have the skills that you need to build the life that you love. Take it one day, one step at a time. You can do this.